Self-Development with Tactics podcast. Today we are going ahead with Brain Rules by, I think, John Medina or Josh Medina, something like this. John Medina. 12 Principles for Surviving and Thriving at Work, Home and School. Yesterday, and maybe even the day before, I don't remember, we went through a different summary, but I have found from the, let me check this, brainrules.net site, there is a PDF with a summary, which might be official. I do not really know, but it looks very good. It is very condensed, and I like it. I appreciate that. So if it is an official summary, it is amazing. It really is. Let's start, but I just also wanna check really quickly if everything. Oh, I can't even check it. Oops. I just need to check really quickly if everything is alright, because I had to set up things newly and stuff, so I'm not quite sure, but it looks alright, which is fine, which is great. And we can go ahead. There I've googled myself. Something that you do. Rule number 1, and we already went through rule number 1, and there is some additional thoughts and additional information by myself and by things that I've very recently, quote unquote, discovered or seen. So check out the first episode of me going through this summary of another summary. But yeah. So exercise boosts brain power. Our brains were built for walking 12 miles a fucking day. To improve your thinking skills, move. Exercise gets blood to your brain, bringing it glucose for energy and oxygen to soak up the toxic electrons that are left over. It also stimulates the protein that keeps neurons connecting. Aerobic exercises just twice a week halves your risk of dementia. And also today I've listened to another episode by Andrew Huberman and the Huberman Lab podcast. Very interesting podcast, very scientific though, but still easy to digest and still very, very, very valuable, at least at my point of view and at least for my life and what I think about and what I like to consume. Once again about moving, exercise, and how it does affect brain health, thinking, and so on and so forth. And I do want, again, underline, like, we quite all know somebody that is very old but still very sharp, and most often that is due to them moving or doing something else that is somewhat like moving. Maybe they're just doing something with their hands, maybe they're building something, whatever it might be, but most often they're still doing something. Also sometimes work. Let's think about Warren Buffett. He is still doing his work. Survival. Rule number 2. The human brain evolved too. We don't have one brain in our head, we have 3. We started with a lizard brain to keep us breathing, then added a brain like a cat's and to top those with a thin layer of jello, known as the cortex, the third and powerful human, quote-unquote, brain. We took over the earth by becoming adaptable to change, coming down from the trees to the savannah when the climate changed. Going from 4 legs to 2 to walk on the savannah freed up energy to develop a complex brain. Symbolic reasoning, the ability to perceive one thing as another, is a uniquely human talent. It may have arisen from our needs to understand one another's intentions and motivations, allowing us to coordinate within a group. Period. Yeah, just some brain history. Rule number 3, which is of the category wiring. Every brain is wired differently. What you do and learn in life physically changes what your brain looks like. It literally rewires it. The various regions of the brain develop at different rates in different people. No two people's brains store the same information in the same way in the same place. We have a great number of ways of being intelligent, many of which don't show up on IQ tests. which is, a big thing for like something I think about or thought about. Yeah, nice. Thought about for quite some time. Like intelligence, IQ tests, and so on and so forth. But yes, indeed, there are many different ways of being intelligent. There are many, many different ways of being smart, many different ways of, quite being good at something. I would argue that being athletic, having athletic intelligence, or just, kind of, let's call it physical intelligence at this point, that this just definitely does not show up on a regular IQ test, which is, as far as I know, based on logic thinking, based on also some mathematical things like, logic thinking, I would call it. And so being sporty, being which by the way also does have something to do with the brain as far as I understand it or I understood it, because you need your brain to move correctly and move fast and move also like very slightly, because sometimes in sports we have to move very slightly, have to throw a ball very precisely. So these are just things that do not show up. I would also argue some artistic intelligence might not necessarily show up. So there may be some different intelligence tests I don't really know about, but in general, this probably is the case. Attention. Rule number 4. People don't pay attention to boring things. The brain's attentional spotlight can focus on only one thing at a time. No multitasking. We are better at seeing patterns and abstracting the meaning of an event than we are at recording detail. Emotional arousal helps the brain learn. Audiences check out after 10 minutes, but you can keep grabbing them back by telling narratives or creating events rich in emotion. Something I talked about before, also in the first episode, emotions do also get us to remember things easier, and also adrenaline, but this is something I'm not going to talk about here. Takes too much time. Short-term memory. Repeat to remember. A very very basic and ancient technique, ancient quote unquote, is to just remember things. Sometimes though, it may seem like you cannot just remember something, even by repeating it 100 and 1,000 times, but eventually, theoretically, you'll be able to learn it and you'll be able to remember it just by repeating something. The problem is, as you might have noticed now, that it just sometimes takes way too much time. So there are some protocols, some things you can do to increase the learning speed and decrease the amount of reps, quote unquote, you need to learn and also then remember something. The brain has many types of memory systems. One type follows 4 stages of processing: encoding, storing, retrieving, and forgetting. Information coming into your brain is immediately split into fragments that are sent to different regions of the cortex for storage. Most of the events that predict whether something learned also will be remembered occur in the first few seconds of learning. The more elaborately we encode a memory during its initial moments, the stronger it will be. You can improve your chances of remembering something if you produce the environment in which you first put it into your brain. Maybe a very emotional one. In brackets, question mark. Rule number 6, remember to repeat, which is long-term memory. Most memories disappear within minutes, but those that survive the fragile period strengthen with time. Long-term memories are formed in a two-way conversation between the hippocampus and the cortex. Until the hippocampus breaks the connection and the memory is fixed in the cortex, which can take years. Our brains give us only an approximate view of reality, because they mix new knowledge with past memories and store them together as one. The way to make long-term memory more reliable is to incorporate new information gradually and repeat it in timed intervals. Very interesting, as I've mentioned this episode and also the last one, in the new Human Lab podcast, he was also talking about the meaning of the hippocampus, what it does, and so on and so forth. And it is actually quite interesting. I'm not going to repeat it because I'm probably going to make quite some mistakes there. So yeah, I'm also going to end the episode here. I hope you've liked it. I hope you've learned something. I hope I've sparked your interest, and might even see you in the next episode of me going through the summary of Brain Rules by John Medina. But yeah, up until then, gonna see you next time. Bye bye.